So today I figured I would talk about how I shoot a high level production on a low production type budget. So I just got back working on a project in Seattle. I was going to shoot this there, but long days ended up just passing out while editing on my laptop, so I'm shooting it now instead. Lately, I've been working on a whole series of videos based upon kind of a project I shot last year that had a much higher budget, whereas these are kind of all budget versions of that project. And that could be for a multitude of reasons, none of which is my business. I mean, it could be economy, it could be whatever's going on with tariffs, it could be a multitude of things, it could just be reallocation of funds. Maybe they're trying to maximize and do more on the budget they have by trimming down where they can to reallocate those to different projects. Whatever the case, it doesn't really matter. This is the budget that we're presented with, so it's a matter of figuring out how to make it work within that range. The big trick with doing these budget versions of the project is you still have to maintain that level of quality. Otherwise, there's no point in you doing it, and there's no point in the client doing it either. For example, a company like Nike, they have a very specific brand identity and look and style, and there's that level of quality and expectation that you have to meet with anything that is produced by Nike. Now, of course, they've worked with a lot of smaller filmmakers and production companies on cool niche creative projects and ideas, but the thing is, even though those might not be the 100 to 200,000, whatever budget they have for their global campaigns, it might be 10, 20, 30, I don't know, $50,000, whatever it is, they still have to match that certain level of quality and expectation, otherwise it won't be used at all. So the same applies here. How do you cut back while still maintaining that level of quality in order to have this be usable and fit the image of work that has been produced previously that might be on bigger budgets? So I'm going to kind of walk through what I've done lately to kind of match that look and aesthetic and maintain that level of quality. So the first thing is going to be location and shot list. Almost always we're renting a space when we do these kind of projects. So the easiest way right there is to find a budget option as far as locations go to shoot. Typically we shoot in homes or kind of office buildings off of something like Peer Space that is already kind of decorated in a way that fits what we're trying to do, cuts down on costs there. Now, if you can cut down the amount of hours you're on set, maybe it's a half day, then automatically there you're cutting down your cost on what that looks like. It may not seem like a lot, but all the little bits add up to be a lot. So a typical Peer Space venue might be, I don't know, $900 to $1,000, $1,200 on the higher side, depending on where you're at. But if you're going for a half day, maybe you're shooting somewhere that's a little bit more budget friendly, you can get that down to $600, $700. So you're saving a little bit right there, right off the bat. And of course, the trick with that is if you're only gonna be there for a half day, you have to be really on time with everything that you're doing. And you're gonna have to reduce your shot lists and expectations to work within that time frame. So luckily, the director I work with just knows how this works, knows what needs to be done, knows timelines, and knows how to fit what we're trying to do into those smaller time frames. So we're shooting these projects kind of in a 5-hour setup, which greatly reduces everything that we're doing and means we have to be really quick, but it also means we cut back on set changing or anything like that to make sure we can fit everything into that time frame. It also might mean cutting back on the complexity of shots. So maybe if there's some sort of jib or Ronin shot or anything like that, maybe it's cutting back to just something like Dana dolly or slider and sticks and kind of going back and forth to reduce setup, movements, and any kind of complex situations that might arise on set. So that kind of leads us into gear and lighting. On these budget projects, I'm going to be renting as little as I possibly can and using mainly Minekit. Now, there'll still be, of course, a rental fee for my equipment, but also since I already own it, generally it's going to be much cheaper for me to rent it out to the project as opposed to renting out something from an external vendor and having to worry about all the hoops that you have to jump through with that, and then at a higher cost. So when it comes to camera equipment, we've been shooting on the Pocket 6K Pro. Love the camera. It's a great budget option, which works well for a lot of these projects. And then we'll use something like the Canon CNE 15-45 2.8 lens. That gives us the coverage we need without having to constantly swap out primes or anything like that, which again reduces the amount of time we're switching and moving things around so we can keep going through the shot list and maintaining our tighter timeline. We'll still have a fizz set up to go to the first AC so you can pull focus. Since we're doing a lot of Dana work or moving talent, we still have to make sure we have that. Other than that, it's a pretty minimal setup and everything is going to be shot on Dana dolly or sticks. So there's not a whole lot of equipment that's going to be brought in other than that setup. Camera will be built ahead of time, so we get on set, it's 15-20 minutes just checking the fizz and putting batteries on, and we'll be good to go. So next on gear is going to be lighting. This is going to tie in a lot with the location that you pick, as well as how the shots are set up. On a budget project, you don't have as many crew members to move equipment around, and you don't have the funds to bring in big lighting equipment and spend that extra time moving it around and switching things up for every set. Because of that, we're usually picking locations that we rely kind of heavily on the natural light, what's working in the situation already, which typically we normally do anyways, but we're bringing in much bigger fixtures to kind of amplify or manipulate it more so to get kind of the perfect look that we're trying to get. On the budget version, we're bringing in smaller fixtures. So if we have in and out cloud coverage or anything like that, on these smaller projects, I'm producing, doing all the pre-production, and then I'm kind of the producer on set, unless we have a little bit of budget left over where we can have an additional producer to help out the director. And then I'm also the DP, which means I'm also bringing all the camera equipment, and I'm bringing all the lighting equipment, and then I'm also bringing any equipment needed for production, whether it's food, drinks, snacks, anything like that. All that stuff is coming in my vehicle, which means I need to consolidate and keep it as compact as I can. So my lighting kit has to kind of maintain that as well. So for lighting, I'm still using the Zhun kit for a lot of this. And so far it's been working great. It has the output I need for these smaller productions, and it still maintains a smaller, more compact form factor. That's easy for me and one other person to kind of move around however we need to in a timely manner to keep things going. So for all these shoots, I'm using the Zhun B500, which is kind of my main key fill light. A 500 watt has enough power to get most everything I need done. And then I'll kind of pair that with the small rig for now, which is really compact. I've been using that a lot, love that. If I need the extra output or just that little more focused lighting, I'll pop that on there and it works great. In addition to that, there's the Zhun Molus G300, which is the 3 to 500 max watt bicolor light as well. Of course, technically you're not getting 500 watts in the max mode unless you're at like 4,000 Kelvin or something like that. Otherwise, it's gonna be 3 to 400-ish. But nonetheless, it's still a great light. So if I need to pair that with the B500 to create one big massive source coming through windows or anything, kind of flood the room, I can do that. Or if I need it to pop up in a corner somewhere to flood another space in the room, or if I just need something that's really compact to get right up against the wall, since again, we're working in smaller budget locations, because it's such a small compact body, it can get really close and out of sight for a lot of things, which helps out a lot trying to frame out certain things if you can tuck things away out of the corner. So it's just plugged in straight to it and I can run it all from my app. I don't have to run back and forth, checking anything, changing anything. This makes it very easy and quick to put all these things together. I did a video recently on my travel kit, which you can check out. That doesn't include the B500 just because it's a slightly bigger fixture than the G300, but it's still small enough if you want to take it on travel, you could. But the B500 has been a great addition to this kit and helped out a lot, giving me that extra bit of power that I need on these shots. So I highly recommend checking that out. Alternatives, of course, aperture, nanlite. Those are both great options, but they come with a little bit bigger form factor and they're not as compact and easy to carry on, and they all have ballast, which is fine. They're great lights nonetheless. The upside to a lot of those is you have control over your green magenta shift, which you don't with the Zhun series. So I usually have some gels on hand just in case. But other than that, these have been absolutely great. In addition to that, I have the X100, which is a bicolor light, and the X60, which is an RGB 60 watt light. And then also I have the tube light. Heat? What? Temperature limit. Tube light is RGB at 100 watts. It's a little bit heavier, but it's a great light, packs a lot of power, which is great to kind of fit it into certain situations where I need to. And that pretty much is my lighting setup. I'll bring some diffusion, some C-stands, some muslin, some 5-in-1 reflectors, always have negative fill to kind of enhance that contrast and play into that. And that's what the lighting setup is. If you have any questions on the B500 or any of that kind of lighting, let me know. So the next is crew, and this has varied a little bit based upon the budgets because they haven't all been the same. They've been around the same area, so crew tends to fluctuate a little bit. What's always on set is myself as DP/semi-producer, depending on the situation. Director is always on set. We'll have one talent usually. Almost always we'll have a audio engineer, first AC to pull focus and just help me with the camera aspect of everything so that I can kind of help the director if need to for any of the production needs. Then we usually always have somebody for hair and makeup. Reason being is, again, we have a certain expectation and level of quality that we're trying to meet. And if your talent doesn't have the right look, then immediately your product is not usable. So that's something we kind of always have on this. After that, I always have at least one person on hand to help me with the lighting and moving set things around. So I'll have kind of a swing, gaffer, grip type person there to kind of work in that role. And lastly would be producer/PA or both, depending upon the budget. It's always good to have somebody on hand to take care of food, anything else, or move things around or grab things, run errands, whatever you need to. So some sort of PA. The producer can sometimes fill that role, again, depending on what kind of project you're working on and what they are willing to and able to do outside of their producer roles. Those two positions kind of fluctuate on these jobs. I know a lot of people will frown upon doing multiple roles or anything like that, but when it comes to projects like these, you kind of just have to do what has to be done in order to get the job done. And because I work with a lot of these people regularly, typically they don't mind helping me out and kind of moving around, doing different things in order to get this job done. This goes back to kind of making sure you have a key core group of vendors or crew that you work with regularly that are going to kind of help you out when these kind of situations arise. Same thing goes with working with clients. Because I'm able to do these smaller budget projects, it gives them a lot more trust and confidence in me that I'm going to be able to help them out and maximize what they can on those bigger budget projects. On the contrast of this, the bigger production version of this, as far as crew, camera equipment, everything like that, would have first AC, you would have your DP, you would have your producer, you'd have your PA, you would have a hair and makeup artist, you'd have a wardrobe artist, you'd have a wardrobe budget, you would have your grip, your gaffer, and then a Best Boy electric, Best Boy grip. It's pretty much, and then a PA. That would be the crew that I would typically have on the bigger budget version of this project. And then it would be a much bigger lighting package with a full 1 to 2 ton grip truck. And then we'd have something like a R60 sky panel, something in that range, as well as an Aperture 1200, a 600, and then maybe a set of Titan tube lights or a stair, something like that. Then maybe some light mats to kind of fill in certain areas. That would be kind of the bigger, more fully fleshed out version of what this project entails. I hope that was useful. I hope that kind of helped you figure out where to kind of cut back and make adjustments to fit those bigger budget projects into smaller versions and budgets. If you have any questions, in the comments. Otherwise, see you next time.